Hey everyone, this is the Friday video, and it's just going to be a bit of an unscripted ramble about the 30 Years' War, Peace of Augsburg, Protestant Reformation, and religion in Europe at the time of the Reformation, the 16th and early 17th century. And I think what I wanted to do is expand upon an idea I posited in my last video, that because of the Peace of Augsburg, that sort of disproves some of the idea, at least, that a lot of people, especially my Catholic friends, assert that because of the Protestant Reformation, this sort of ended the idea of a united Christian Europe, of Christendom, that from now on you're going to have these massive wars between Christian nations that are going to kill millions of people, and it's all because of the Protestant Reformation. And I really don't think that's true. And even if there is some truth to it, there's obviously way more nuance to it than that. You can't just say, hey, look, Martin Luther is the cause of all our problems. But anyways, I think what I wanted to get at was first that the Diet of Augsburg, or the Peace of Augsburg in 1555, what it did was establish still an idea that you could have a Christian nation, like the Holy Roman Empire, like Germany, which could have Lutheran and Catholic, Protestant and Catholic confessions coexisting in peace, still under one banner of the empire. And the fact that this was possible midway between the Reformation and the 30 Years' War, and the fact that the 30 Years' War, which is sort of pointed at as the massive war between Protestantism and Catholicism, that was 100 years after the Reformation. It was generations after Luther. It was long after he died. So I don't really think you can point to it. I mean, from what I've pointed out, you had the peasant uprisings early on in the Reformation, which Luther absolutely condemned. You then had the Schmalkaldic War in 1546 to 47, which, considering how short it was, that essentially just led to the Diet of Augsburg, because the Protestant Catholic factions, especially the emperor, sort of understood that this was no longer just a little uprising of a religious sect in Europe like the Lollards or the Hussites. You couldn't really, now you can't stamp out Lutheranism. It's too strong. And also, all this fighting was going to do is allow Germany to be completely exploited by their chief rival of France. And this is what happened in the 30 Years' War. But what the Diet of Augsburg did, or the Peace of Augsburg, is, firstly, it allowed princes in Germany and in the Holy Roman Empire to determine the religion of themselves and their territory. So you could choose whether or not you're going to be Catholic or Lutheran, and whether or not the people you rule over are going to be Catholic or Lutheran. And for the people in your territory that couldn't, who, because of their own convictions or whatever reason, would not convert, they're not going to be molested. They're allowed to emigrate. And you also have religious liberties being extended to minor nobles and the sort of ecclesiastical states in Germany and the Holy Roman Empire, like the Archbishopric of Cologne and Salzburg, which were states ruled over by the clergy. And I think the precedent this established is sort of the beginning of a notion of religious tolerance. And it allowed for a reasonable degree of peace. I mean, there was, certain religious aspects of conflicts between the Reformation and the 30 Years' War, like the war between England and Spain, culminating in the Spanish Armada, or the Dutch War for Independence from Spain. But they weren't really, massive European-wide wars, and, they didn't have the same measure of brutality that the 30 Years' War did. And they weren't really religiously based conflicts. It may have been an aspect, but it wasn't the primary cause. Now, anyways, sort of about the 30 Years... Now, another thought is that you can't really just make an easy distinction between Protestant and Catholic during this time, because there wasn't just sort of one Protestantism. You had four major sects of Protestantism at the time. You had the Lutherans, which the Catholics sort of largely tolerated, ironically, considering they were sort of the start of all of this. The Anglicans, which fairly similar to Catholicism. The Calvinists, who everyone hated, and the Anabaptists, which were a small sect in northwest Germany, who eventually became the progenitors of the Mennonites and the Amish when they came to America, and everyone really hated them. And then, of course, you have the Jews, which everybody also hates. But, you can't just make an easy distinction between Protestant and Catholic. It's like the Lutheran, there's going to be Lutheran and Calvinists are not going to be the easiest, are not going to be completely compatible allies. And, when John Sigismund, the Elector of Brandenburg, converted to Calvinism, the people he was ruling over, the Lutheran people of Brandenburg, were sort of really pissed at this. But sort of moving on to the 30 Years' War, it was not really religious conflict. The fact is, first off, there was so much sort of switching of sides there, and, the leader of the imperial forces, the quote-unquote Catholic forces, was a guy by the name of Albrecht von Wallenstein. He was Protestant. And who comes to the aid of the Protestant cause, quote-unquote, towards the end of the war? Oh, look, it's Catholic France, which would be in the process of stamping out its Protestant subjects. And, from what I sort of see is that it was largely, and this is a very rough sort of overview of it, you should do your own research about this as well. It's not something I'm going to get into all that much outside of what happened at Brandenburg in my next video, but I sort of see it more as both a German civil war between largely Protestant North German princes and the Catholic Empire for greater autonomy. And then, whilst Germany was undergoing a civil war, you have these various other great European powers exploiting this vacuum to establish dominance, like Sweden and France. Because of the fact that, as disunited as the Holy Roman Empire was before, it was still sort of considered a very powerful force within Europe. It was united enough that it could sort of constitute an entity that the French are not going to find it easy to just stride in and hey, let's invade Germany, because that's going to be a great idea. No, they sort of really wait until the 30 Years' War, when Germany is at its weakest. And so various powers essentially just trying to fight over for increased control and make sure that they no longer have to really worry about the Holy Roman Empire as being a all-powerful, dominant, untouchable threat. And so I think that's about it for what I was going to say. On a last note, though, actually, I think a lot of Catholics will try and say that, they'll try and justify the fact, all the issues with the Reformation by saying, hey, if we just said Catholic, we would have avoided all these wars, which weren't really all that much caused by religion in the first place. And, hey, look, we had the Council of Trent, and we did the Counter-Reformation, so, we addressed all the problems. Well, obviously not, and it was a bit too late by then. And I think what I really just don't like is that there seems to be a refusal to really acknowledge any responsibility on the part of the Catholic Church for this. I mean, just look up the things that Alexander VI was doing. The Pope, I think he was either the first or he was one or two before Urban II, or Leo X, who was over, who resided over the Protestant Reformation. Yeah, there was mass amounts of corruption, and it needed to be addressed. And if it wasn't going to be Luther, well then, if he wasn't the one, the later Reformation would have been even worse for the Catholic Church, because the pressure would have kept building up and building up even more. So, just take responsibility, and maybe this wouldn't have had to happen. But anyways, that's about it for this video. I'll see you on Monday. Have a good day.